Welcome, everybody. This is SEAL Team 7, and this is part of my character focus series where we get one guest talking about one character. And this week, I wanted to focus on Tifa. And as a preface, Tifa's depiction in Rebirth is my favorite one. I think of all of the glow ups of a of a main character, Tifa got the biggest one, and that's even over Cloud. Because while Cloud had some great moments, usually when covered with blood, I felt like he still mostly took on the role of our eyes and ears for the other characters. And so I was really taken aback at how much Tifa was given in this game, and I think it was all really good depiction. So for my guest, I got the very well-known content creator, primarily known for her profile on X.com. But you have a wide array of presence throughout various social medias. If you would like to introduce yourself and talk about that, take it away.
Hi. Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm TifaTheMonk. Most of you know me from Twitter. I also run a Discord server called Under the Stars. And I have a nearly dead YouTube channel, which I keep saying I'm going to revive, and then I never do. But I don't know, with enough pressure, I might get off my butt and actually do something with it. And yeah, I am super excited. This has been a podcast that's been long in coming. And I'm just super excited to talk about Tifa because, as you know, she's one of my favorite characters, with the exception of Cloud. Cloud and Tifa are pretty much even keel in as far as favorite characters go. But Tifa is like uniquely fun to talk about because there's so much to her, and she's really gotten a lot of, like as you said, she's got the best glow up of almost anyone in the main cast.
Yeah.
And it's not even just this game, it's the stuff leading up to it, and I hope I'm allowed to talk about Traces of Two Paths in this podcast.
By the way,
as well,
everybody, we're gonna spoil the shit out of everything. There is no piece of canon lore that is off the table.
Perfect. Because I love to talk about all of it.
Well, that's good. You did mention that the stuff leading up to it is, part of Tifa's blow up, and right off the bat, I will say that for the most part, the compilation has been a great service to Tifa's character. We, her depiction in Advent Children, but also On the Way to a Smile. We get this interesting depiction of her, and we get depictions in The Kids Are All Right. And then obviously she got a what I think is one of the strongest pieces of writing from Nojima ever in her side of Traces of Two Paths. Now, before I get into anything, I do want to just say I actually really like Aerith as a character too. So that's I'm not trying to say, I'm not really picking sides, in that portion of the fandom debate. I have opinions on everything, like with feelings and stuff like that, and maybe we'll save the very last question for that so that people are forced to watch a whole video before we get to the juicy stuff. But for the most part, I really did like all the characters in Rebirth, and have grown to love a lot of the characters through the compilation and stuff like that. But Tifa, I think, is the one that, from the OG, and I didn't dislike her in the OG, to be very clear. It's just that most of her character arc came, later in the game. I mean, she certainly had, the Seventh Heaven and, elements of the Midgar stuff, but for the most part, there was a really long stretch of time before we got into the meat of her character. And I was surprised that Rebirth was able to cover a similar period of time before we get to the real meat of her character, and still somehow elevate her character even more than the OG ever did. So what are your thoughts? First of all, how long has Tifa been your favorite character, or a character that you love in FF7?
Well, shoot. That's a tricky question, but I would say, let's see, because I got introduced to FF7 through Kingdom Hearts, and so like the timeline is a little messy in my head. I remember playing OG when I was like 12, so about as long as that. Like I said, I started out as a Cloud fan, and it was through experiencing his story that I grew to appreciate Tifa as a character. And then as more time went on, and of course, because I am, at least by your standards, I'm a somewhat newer fan, there was more of the compilation available to me as I was playing through. And so I had, I didn't have to wait years and years to see Tifa in other mediums. And I'll agree with you on this front, is that the compilation did a huge service to Tifa as a character.
Yeah.
Because it added so much depth to her that, I mean, really honestly, all the different characters received, additional lore, but Tifa in particular really benefits from this additional lore and this additional background. Like, you can tell that Nojima puts a lot of care in the way that he writes Tifa, and it really shines through in Traces of Two Past. But yeah, I've been a Tifa fan for pretty much as long as I've been an FF7 fan. I've been a Cloud fan for slightly longer, but I've been a Tifa fan for pretty much the entirety of my time playing FF7.
Okay.
And a huge part of that is, I will say that, to the point you were making earlier, that, a lot of Tifa's character arc kind of took a back seat in like the first disc of OG, and then it just kind of expands much more in disc 2. I was one of those people where I love twists like that, and so that aspect right there actually pulled me in a little bit, because I was like, ooh, this is interesting, because this was, Tifa was kind of like this quiet character, because she kind of hung out in the background. You could tell there was a lot going on with her, but she wasn't saying or doing a whole lot. She was just kind of hanging out in the back. And then once you get to Northern Crater, all of a sudden you have Cloud breaking down. He turns to Tifa and says, "I'm sorry, Tifa," and it's your opinion that matters. And I'm sitting there going, what? Hold on. What's going on? I was like, this is interesting. And so that just kind of piqued my interest with her. And then I was like, okay, the story's taken an interesting turn. And it really, those kind of twists like really excite me, which is why I always say Disc 2 of FF7 is why FF7 is one of my favorite games of all time. Because I love the way the story twists and turns towards the latter half of it.
Yeah. And I do think that, if I'm being completely honest, that a lot of my attachment to the character is tied to that latter half twist, because that latter half twist is, not just but the devs, sort of insistence upon the crux of the story. That moment where Cloud finds himself, and Tifa being kind of an anchor, kind of a grounding point, and sort of the guide through that, was really powerful reflection on her as a character. What would you say your favorite aspects of Tifa are? First, outside of Rebirth, and then within Rebirth, what were things that you really liked shown of her character in Rebirth, and what were things that maybe you think had the best glow up, as we will?
For me personally, I just love the selflessness that she has. The amount she's such a caring character, like through, and it's shown well in this game, and it's also shown very well outside of this as well. I mean, that is like the central aspect of Tifa's character, is just how caring she is. And really, honestly, just, I know that she sometimes gets criticism for this, about the fact that she puts others ahead of herself, and sometimes she can do it so much to a point that it becomes a detriment to her. But for the most part, it is a plus for her, because she pours so much of herself into the people, into the care for the people around her, and it makes it like, I love this one scene in Costa del Sol with Jenny, where she wants to hate Tifa so much, and Tifa's just so nice and so caring that she's like, I can't even hate you. You're like, why are you so nice?
Yeah.
And it's like that's really how I feel about Tifa, is that she's this strong fighter, and she's got a temper. We see it, but it's always justified. It's always justified whenever she finally has enough, and she's ready to pummel somebody, like Gus or Don Corneo or whatever. Like, these people had it coming.
Yeah.
But Tifa is just, she has so much forbearance with people, and it's just lucky for Cloud that Tifa just is that way, because she saves him.
Yeah.
Because of how selfless she is, because of how caring she is, and she's always looking out for him all the time. And it's not just him; it's Marlene, it's Barrett, it's Aerith, it's Yuffie. Everyone around her, Tifa's always looking out for other people. And there's this really, like, kind of sweet moment that highlights this in Remake, when she's extending kindness to the Shinra middle manager.
Right.
This guy, he works for the enemy, but she's not going to be cruel to him. She's like, I don't want anyone to get hurt. And that's always been something that I've always found very endearing about her, is that she's got these strong morals that, even when she has every reason to hate the world, everything has been taken from her. I mean, she lost her home. She lost her parents. Her dad was brutally murdered.
Yeah.
And she was basically dumped in the slums with nothing but the clothes on her back. She's, neck deep in debt. Everybody's just kind of taking advantage of her. She has every reason to be bitter and angry and just hate the world. And she'd be completely justified in being that way. But she's not. She's still got that kind heart, and she's always looking out for other people. And so that to me has always been the biggest thing that I've loved about Tifa.
And you talked about, like, the tragedy that marked her past. I think it's almost a shame that we'll never, we don't have like a full game depiction of this, but the story of what she went through between getting to Midgar and then owning Seventh Heaven is one of, like, the most, I think, like, kind of thematically connected narratives to one of the core tenets of OG, which is, like, how you respond to being an orphan. Like, we have, like, essentially every main character and every antagonist is an orphan of some kind. Like, it's very tragic, but, like, these characters are very much defined by how they respond to that hardship, respond to being orphaned. And, like, the idea of Tifa just being dropped off in this in this huge city after living in a tiny backwater city and her whole life, and then not knowing who to trust, not understanding any of the subtext or context of the danger she's in, having to trust, you know, uh, this really weird guy named Rakesh just because he vaguely knows, her martial arts teacher, then going through this insane struggle to, kind of learn who she is, learn that she's being taken advantage of, fight back, and, then ultimately join Avalanche. And, so she goes through all this hardship, and then she gets this sum of money that she, had worked really hard to get, and then she has all this extra money all of a sudden because, she's literally eliminated her debt with fists. And what does she do with the money? She helps Barrett and Marlene out. It's like it's so Final Fantasy VII, and it's something that feels so consistent with the lore that it's almost like it could have always been there, and you really don't even question it. But I do think that people that just played the OG are missing out, not knowing, the history of Seventh Heaven and Tifa's characterization in that. And I do think that that's ultra strong, and they built up all that subtext for people that are, like hardcore fans like us. And I was afraid that what that meant is that, that's where it would stay, that we would get to Rebirth, and we would get maybe a few moments here and there, but that this would really be, focused on a few other characters. But I was pleasantly surprised at almost every major story beat. She had a poignant contribution, like, and she does have flaws. Like we were talking about how people criticize her sometimes for, being, for caring too much and sometimes to a fault. I hate characters without fault. I have no interest in a character being depicted that way. Like, that's so boring. I like people with relatable faults, and like even in the first chapter, like getting to see her stand up for herself shows that she's like really kind of fighting she's fighting things in her that have kept her from being successful or happy or relating well with other people. Like the very first dialogue she has with Cloud up on the roof in Calm was so good. I was like, it was like so empowering for her as a character. Like she's saying, hey, look, where the fuck were you, dude? Like, you're coming at me, calling me a Genova clone or whatever. Where were you? Like, I had to scrape myself together, people died getting me healthy, where were you, dog? And of course she didn't know that he was in a vat, like below the Nibble Mansion. But still, I liked her standing up for herself, but then still being able to be compassionate like the very next morning. And then I also really liked how I really loved her relationship with Aerith too. Like throughout the game, that was like a really I think a strong theme. And I think you get little bits where there feels like tension between the two, and I feel like that felt like normal to me. That felt like what you would expect between a group of young 20-year-olds with arrested development. Like that's what I would expect. And so that some of that tension was, I thought, appropriate and made it not like boring. But like some of the relational stuff that she had with Aerith throughout, and including in chapter 9, I thought that was really really strong. What would you say your favorite moment in Rebirth was? Doesn't have to be Tifa related, but probably was.
No. Well, it is. It's pretty much like it's the entire part where she falls into the live stream. Like that whole part of the game, like I had to pick my jaw up off the ground. Okay, that's that's how good it was, and it took me completely by surprise. And it's probably the part of the game I've watched the most. Believe it or not, despite my profile picture on Twitter, the part that I love the most is Tifa falling in the live stream in Gungaga, because it's such an emotionally poignant scene. and there's so much like foreshadowing there. Like this is like I felt like I was seeing something I shouldn't even be seeing yet. Like and I was just so, and even just like the quick little, like when you first go through the scene and you hear like the voices and you're like following the voices through, and then you hear Thea's voice for the first time. Like
Yeah.
I was blown away. I was like, no way did they just actually like allow us to hear Thea's voice already. And it was just like the entire, I guess you could say the conflict of FF7 was all just like poured into like this one little condensed scene here, because you have, you know, the white whispers and the black whispers going to war, you have weapons, you have Sephiroth in there, you know, fucking shit up, and
Yeah.
that's a very technical, by the way.
Yeah.
And you get to see Tifa's memories, and there's so many like little Easter eggs thrown in there too. Like even aside from the main four memories that you experience during that scene, you can see Seventh Heaven in the background. You can see the Stargazer Heights, like the balcony to Stargazer Heights, like just in the background. Like it's such a cool scene. And then like the entire area is like surrounded by like the Nibelheim Mountains. Like it's so visually beautiful. The music is crazy, and Tifa just going through all of this, like having like this Jonah in the whale moment, which is really crazy. And there's just so much going on in that scene. It's almost hard to just like even just quantify it in a sentence.
Yeah.
But
we got my favorite part of the story too in there. We got the White Whispers. Hell yeah.
Yeah, and again, this scene to me was like so cool, because, you know, the unfortunate thing, you know, being a Tifa fan, is that there unfortunately is a segment of the fandom, you know, that just kind of always tries to dismiss her and downplay her role as a heroine, because the developers have said exhaustively that there are two heroines in this story, and they always put them at even keel as far as their importance to the story. And honestly, that key art that they dropped that reflects, you know, Cloud and Zack is honestly, I felt like that was a little bit of a shot across the bow. Like, hey, they're both important.
Yeah.
So, and they both have a role to play in this story. So, to me, even alongside with just being excited about the scene, it felt vindicating to see that Tifa's role in the live stream was being handled with such care and was being treated with the importance that it deserved.
Absolutely.
And, you know, basically, like, using, not only having the main villain have Tifa in his crosshairs, and he's had her in his crosshairs, by the way, throughout the entire story, just, you know, gradually in little points here and there. You know, Sephiroth keeps popping up. You know, he pops up and calls him, hey, don't trust her, she's a Genova clone. He pops up again in the ship to Junon, you know, don't let her fool you. And it's like he's constantly just targeting Tifa all the way up to this point. So the build up for this scene was phenomenal. And just showing that the planet itself is intervening on the behalf of protecting Tifa and making sure that she is where she needs to be.
Right.
And then that last scene where, you know, you have Barrett and Dr. Sheeran and Aerith talking to her, and then the Dr. Sheeran saying, hey, you know, you can't die here. Too many people still depend on you. I was like, this is like the perfect scene. Yeah.
I still kind of get choked up watching it. I actually got choked up when it hit the, you know, the final two frames, you know, with one with, you know, Aerith reaching to her, and And I think that was thematically interesting because we've got a pretty solid idea that the White Whispers, are affiliated with, whatever Aerith's doing as a Force Ghost, and so the idea that she was supportive of, like, she was elevating Tifa, I think, in a way that will prepare her to ultimately, save Cloud and by extension the world. I love that, but then the heartbreaking shot where she's reaching out as Cloud and Sephiroth are walking away, and just like in every language, the performance of that line, like don't take him too, is so good. It's so heartbreaking, and I think one of, like, kind of the emotional core of that scene for me was, just so much has been taken from Tifa already, and she persists. But to get a look at it, like that in a lens, really, I think kind of it highlighted the stakes for her as a character. And then the next scene, where the weapon spits her out, and then there's that connection with Barrett, where Barrett goes and grabs her. That's a really beautiful scene. And then the dialogue in Cisne's hut is the direction in that scene, and the actual dialogue between the two is probably like one of the most cinematic moments in Final Fantasy history, like in terms of a pure dialogue between two characters. And I know that on Final Fan TV, the sort of VO director was on there talking about scenes that really, like, stuck with him, and he said that was the scene. That was the scene that really, like, kind of made this feel like, this isn't just some silly video game. This is a timeless classic. This is a timeless story. So I really like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it, and it's so important because, again, these core memories form, like, they form, like, the characters almost to a spiritual level, Tifa and Cloud.
Yeah.
Like these childhood memories form who they become as adults, and it's what ties them together in such a powerful way. And it just to see, like, I think it was on Max's stream, actually, where when Cloud says, when Tifa starts talking about how she was going to go up Mount Nebel, and Emilio and the boys were going up there with her, and she talks about how, they said, oh, they told me they egged you on or whatever. And you can see the moment when, like, real Cloud kind of jumps out, and he's like, what did they tell you? Like, Cody does such a good job during the voicing of this scene in particular. Really does, the way he's able to kind of change his voice up a little bit when, he's kind of dropping that soldier persona, and, real Cloud starts coming out, that more vulnerable side of, and his entire, like, facial expression changes and everything. It was handled so well. And again, that's another thing that is so special about Tifa, is that, and this was something that the developers spoke about with Remake, is that Tifa has this unique sort of presence to her that, the real Cloud comes out when he's around her. And so this scene in particular in Cisne's hut is so powerful because it's one of the few moments where Cloud allows himself to be truly vulnerable. Yeah. Where he truly opens himself up. He doesn't open himself up like that around anyone but Tifa. He opens himself up a little bit around the rest of the crew, and he's feeling a little bit more at ease, and you can kind of see that in the way he's interacting with Barrett and Yuffie and Aerith and everyone. But with Tifa in particular, there's just this unique level of trust, and which is crazy because, he's got Sephiroth in his ear telling him, hey, that's a Genova clone, don't trust her.
Yeah.
And it's still, even with all that, Cloud still chooses to allow himself to open up around her.
For
and
sure,
it just it's such a powerful scene, and I love it so much.
I do too, and I think that's the relationship stuff aside, I think that it's the first opportunity we get to see the most authentic Cloud. And I'm not even saying that's the full Cloud yet. I still think that we'll get, this kind of, post live stream Cloud that's got, kind of both the lived experiences he's had with the people that he's, had since he arrived in Midgar, but also, the him that's motion sick and, all that stuff. I think we'll get like an even more full version of his character, at some point in part 3. But so far, I agree that this is the version of him that's the most authentic we've ever seen, and it's also kind of a microcosm of his journey, in the overall arcing FF7 narrative, where it's like there's this, big failure and betrayal because of, quite frankly, because of the cells inside of him. And then there is a remorse followed by like deep introspection, and I think that's a really powerful message. And it was something that I'd, in 1997, never seen explored like that ever in any piece of media ever. So for me, that was the thing that set FF7 apart from, the other games. And we talked a little bit about this before the stream, is that, it having the weird perspective of being like functionally an adult, when Final Fantasy VII first came out, I got to see the way that the fandom was kind of formed and the way that people used to respond, and it's very similar to Rebirth, more similar to Rebirth than Remake, in that almost everybody was like, this is a game of the year contender. This is one of the games of all time. I didn't like the ending because it was too ambiguous. That was like the big criticism. And, we're kind of dealing with a variant of that now. Or, there's also this issue where a lot of the legacy of Final Fantasy VII came from people that only played the first disc, because, people didn't play video games for as long as they did back then. Like, it was really wild to play something for 40 hours in 1997. Like, I know that sounds insane now, looking at, our 1,000 hour, play counts for, Minecraft and stuff. But back then, it was not a thing. And so a lot of people also just didn't ever get to the part of the game that told you what it was about, which, did put some pressure on the legacy of Final Fantasy VII when they were remaking it, because now, we have to end the game at the scene that everybody remembers, but isn't necessarily the core of it. So how do you restructure a trilogy to remind people of the actual narrative core when you're appealing to people that, may not have played all 3 discs? And I think they did a really good job by foreshadowing, that journey that Cloud goes on with Tifa in this scene. So I loved it.
Yeah, and if I may piggyback off of that,
please.
I think that's again why right out from the gate we have this sort of subplot kind of weaved in through the story, all leading up to this scene as well. It's not just chapter 9 and then that's done. No, there is build-up throughout the entire game leading up to this point as well. So there's these constant reminders of, hey, this is an important plot point, and they spent a lot of time actually focused on the identity crisis aspect of Cloud's character. which of course is intrinsically tied to Tifa. So I think they handled it quite well. And again, it's going to be nothing but a benefit once we get to part 3, that this is not just being dropped out of nowhere. We have this buildup. We have all this foreshadowing. So, you know, your player base is primed and ready for when we get to that scene. And it's going to, the payoff is going to be so much more now because people have been, they've been primed for it now.
Right.
And now we have, like, it feels like part of an actual storyline instead of just one scene, one and done. No, this is the climax of Final Fantasy VII.
It is and potentially, you know, given some of the dev comments about this maybe being their last game, you know, in the series at least, you know, this is kind of the culmination of all of it. You know, very likely. I'm sure, you know, they'll find a way to squeeze money out of it later on, or, you know, in 2080 when the, you know, the Neuralink remake comes out or whatever. But you know, for now, like it's kind of like the original dev's climax, and so I agree it's really important to lay the foundation. Before we like talk for, we'll give it like a dedicated 20 minutes tops on relationships. I'll just briefly touch on that. Before that though, I have a question. What is your favorite bit of Tifa, like, trivia or lore?
That's a very good question. I would say I really like the fact that the Tifa is essentially self-taught, and she that to me is something that's always been something that I've admired in her character, is that, you know, when it came to, yes, she did receive training from Zangon, but she largely taught herself.
Yeah.
And she even with her own unique fighting style.
Yeah.
And personally, and I know this is a wish shared by many Tifa fans, by the way, not just me. We really want to see a moment where Tifa has kind of like a standoff with Zangon. Not necessarily any sort of, not like she's fighting him because she's angry at him, although she might have, you know,
he's
some
a
reason
dick.
to be.
Zangon is a dick. Okay, I'm just gonna say that. Kick his ass. That dude just drops her with the creepiest asshole.
That is true.
Rakesh was an asshole. You guys don't want to know what I'm talking about? Traces of Two Pasts. Rakesh.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. And so I guess what we can do is we can do a 2-for fight. Since Tifa already kicked Rakesh's ass, we'll let Cloud have a swing at him the next time. And then Tifa can go use her new and improved fighting style and beat the crap out of Zangon, and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah. Chat says, damn, people be dunking on Zaddy Zangan. Okay, look, I will admit the rainbow side of me does fully agree with that statement.
I think he looks like Sean Connery. But
yeah, but like swole and yeah. Anyways, okay. I digress. Okay, do you have any? So okay, that's a cool idea. Like the wish for Tifa. Do you think Tifa should fight? Should have a slap fight on the canon?
Okay, so I have my own. Like I've thought about this a lot, obviously, because it's one of my favorite scenes from OG.
Yeah.
But I'm one of the few people who thinks that the slap fight has aged terribly. So
yeah, I've never met anybody else that thinks that. He says like a liar. Yeah.
But for me personally, I would much rather have a mech fight.
Okay.
Between Tifa and Scarlet.
Okay,
kind of
wait.
and
Wait, I need to ask. So Tifa would also get a mech?
I would. Story-wise, I don't think that would actually be plausible, but Tifa just versus Scarlet in her mech. It's so kind of like that boss fight in Gongaga, but she's in her mech, so I was like, okay, this would be really cool, because I felt like that was almost like a little bit of foreshadowing there too, where with Scarlet and Tifa, I was like, this is feeling very disc 3-ish, or excuse me, disc 2-ish.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it would be really cool if Tifa were to finish that fight. And people are like, oh, Tifa just by herself against Scarlet? And I'm like, yes, she can do it.
I love it.
And then, and of course, I'm one of those people who really wants to see the 7th Infantry brought back, and so I want, like, the 7th Infantry to, like, aid in the escape from Junon. I have, like, 10 different headcanons about what I want to do with the escape from Junon, because that is one of my favorite scenes from OG. I love it so much. I want, like, a whole, like, Mission Impossible style storyline associated with that.
Yeah. I'm curious how they're gonna do that. They have a lot to fill in, and it feels like some stuff's gonna get moved around. It's kind of Gadu. They've really amplified the parties involved. You know, with the Republic of Junon, the SRC, Belen, you know, all that stuff. So I feel like there's gonna be a lot going on during the Junon escape, if that happens the same way. I do think, though, that the best idea that I've heard for the entirety of Part 3 is the one you just accidentally said, where it turns into, like, Evangelion and Tifa gets a mech. I kind of think we got to do that now. So if you're listening, Square Enix, you can credit TifaTheMonk for this, but ours said it. He could be in the Sapphire Dolphin against the Crimson Mare. Look at that, guys.
You know, that sounds pretty sick. If they can make it work storyline wise, where it doesn't feel too hokey, how Tifa manages to get a mech, I'm all for it.
You know, honestly,
mech on mech.
I think they could get away with it. This game is all, like, I think it's really just perfectly silly enough. I mean, there's, like, Bollywood dance fights. There's enough goofy stuff that happens that I think you could really easily do that. But no, I'm with you, though, that whatever has to happen, let's not make it a slap fight. You know, let's make it like Tifa versus Scarlet. The thing is, though, that's kind of got me concerned about that is that so many other people have been set up as, like, the primary antagonist of Scarlet. Like, Yuffie and Barrett should hate Scarlet. So it's weird that Tifa is fighting her. Other than that, they wanted to do a slap fight because that's how Toriyama is, or was, back then. You know?
Well, the only thing I would say is, you know, she literally tried to kill Tifa, so I mean, that would be kind of a reason. Yeah. I mean, she tried to literally stick this poor girl in a gas chamber, so you know.
But like all of them, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. That's fair. She defends her friends.
But I will say this, though, is that I think, at least from Scarlet's point of view, I think there's like almost like this. Scarlet seems to have like this weird like jealousy of Tifa. I've noticed. I don't know if I'm picking up on something here. That's just my female intuition kicking in, going, she's got something against Tifa, like more than just her just being an Avalanche member. I don't know. All right. But she's got some kind of like unique desire to do Tifa in. So, yeah, if Tifa wants to, at least get a punch in, I'll be fine with that. I just the slap fight. It's just it just aged terribly. I'm sorry. I know I'm gonna be the unpopular opinion here. Everybody wants to see this guy.
Not here. No, most of the purists don't come to mind. So,
But at least for me, like Tifa is a fighter. She's a martial artist. Bitch, she ain't gonna be slapping anybody. She's gonna be punching. She's gonna be doing anything. Like, this woman literally tried to kill her. She's not gonna go in, oh, let me slap you around. But no, punch her, knock some teeth down her throat. I mean, good girl.
Yeah.
But that's why I like the idea of the fight so much, because not only, I mean, maybe people will be a little less touchy about removing the slap fight if we put in a really cool boss fight in its place.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I originally envisioned it is, I'm not sure if you've ever played Metal Gear Solid 4, but there's this really long, drawn-out fight between Solid Snake and Ocelot, and it's like just this brutal, like, slow punch fight, you know? And I would love to see, like, that level of cinematic mastery. Yeah, Liquid Scarlet, exactly. Okay, so that's silly enough. So you want to hear my favorite little bit of Tifa headcanon hypothesis lore?
Go for it.
Okay, I believe that the reason Lockhart was chosen... Super Ramio, welcome in, by the way. I just saw you in chat. I love it. I love your stuff, by the way. So... the reason I think Lockhart was chosen as the name for Tifa Lockhart is because it is essentially a reference to James Lovelock. You know who James Lovelock is?
Educate me on that one.
James Lovelock was a chemist that developed the Gaia theory, or the Gaia principle. And if you were to read the Gaia principle on paper, it sounds like a mixture of the life stream and collective unconscious, which is the thing that Carl Jung invented, that Nojima said will help us decode the plot. So it's essentially this idea that the Earth is sort of an entity that has a, like, synergistic and, like, self-regulating complex ecological system. It's sort of its own mind, so it co-evolves, and it's really like the life stream, you know, like it's this concept ultra similar to the life stream. And I mean, it seems like really on board with, like, the shit Nojima would do. And then also, you know, they were sharing a hallway with the Xenogears guy, you know, which was being released at the same time. So they had to have a shared library. It wouldn't be surprising to me if that's where the name Lockhart came from, because Lovelock, Lockhart. I would be really happy to find that to be true, because it's just so thematically interesting. Also, the fact that she's kind of the, you know, the star of the live stream scene, you know, other than Cloud. I always think that it's really interesting. I don't know about Tifa. There's been a lot of people that have suggested that the name Tifa comes from the Kabbalah. There's one of the 10 Sephiroth is Tiferet, which a lot of people assume means that Tifa and Aerith came from that. But I think there's probably something sillier, not really a connection thing. But I do think Lovelock is a solid connection. That's my opinion. So take that to your people, to the Tifa people, do tons of research, come back to me and tell me if I'm right.
All right, will do. New assignment.
Okay. I think it's time. So, you want to talk about shipping at all?
Oh, I suppose there's no escaping it, is there?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm known for on Twitter anyway. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't. But oh man, yeah, I just think that the way they've handled everything up to this point has been really, really good. It's surpassed my expectations in a lot of ways. I said this about Remake as well, because even before getting into Remake, because I created my account in like 2019. You know, I wasn't active in the fandom, but I was just kind of keeping an eye on things because I've been waiting for this Remake project for a long time. Like, I was one of the, like, I remember when the 2003 tech demo dropped. Like, that's how long I've been like, okay, are they going to remake this game? Are they going to remake this game? Are they going to remake this game? I mean, I was one of those people. And so when they announced it, I was like super excited. And then, you know, we go through these long periods of time where nothing, freaking crickets. And then all of a sudden they do this huge dump and be like, oh, okay, so we got this and this and this. And so I think it was E3 of 2019. That's when I really started, you know, keeping tabs on everything. And then, but I was still kind of neck deep in the Star Wars fandom around that time. Hey, watch it. But I was in but it was like September of 2019 when the what was it, the Tokyo game show trailer dropped. And then I was like, okay, I need to like make a different account because I'm sitting here trying to hype up FF7 to the Star Wars fandom. It's not landing. So I needed to go make an entirely different account. And so I went and I made my account and I started hyping up FF7. But there's like this but when they announced that, oh, well, this is only the Midgar portion of the game, I was like, just Midgar? Really? We got a whole game just in Midgar? This game's gonna take forever to get through. I was like, there was part of me that was just like, oh god, they're gonna drag this out forever. And, you know, me being someone who played OG, you know, I'm sitting there in the back of my mind thinking, well, Tifa's barely gonna have anything to do in this game because, you know, Tifa, she has a few moments in Midgar, but honestly, she doesn't have a lot in Midgar. And so I'm just kind of thinking of this as a Tifa fan going, so this is going to be a slog until we get to basically Northern Crater. Like, we're going to get a few things here and there, but it's, you know, it's probably just not going to, you know, she's not going to have many moments to shine. And then I played the remake and I'm like, wow, they actually did a solid job of just balancing everything out and making sure that each of these characters had, you know, moments to shine that didn't really go against the OG. It was just, in my opinion, it was more of an enhancement of these scenes. It was expanding on what was already there. And again, incorporating compilation lore into it. And I thought it was handled really well. And gave each of these characters so much depth that they just didn't have before. And of course, by extension, Cloud and Tifa's relationship was one of those things that really felt like they were handling with care. It wasn't just thrown in there, but they were handling it with the care that and the attention that it deserved. Because this is one of the things that, you know, it's going to be a selling point, you know, for part 3. I mean, Cloud and Tifa's relationship is part of that crux that we talked about earlier.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's such a central part of the live stream scene because, again, as we just read with 2000 Gil to the hero, what is Cloud's motivation? Why is he doing all Oh my god. I'm gonna pretend like you didn't say that.
Alright. No, what is the motivation?
Yeah. His motivation is to be someone special, to be someone that Tifa takes notice of. So that it being a central part, and again, it also paints this what's the word I'm looking for? it gives you a unique view into why Sephiroth is targeting Tifa as much as he is,
right?
And why he's saying those you love to Cloud. And if you look at the terminology that's used in the Japanese, the term "I" is what he uses, and that the type of love that describes is like a very deep, very powerful kind of love, and like it's a term that's not often used in the Japanese language because of the implications that come with it. And so the fact that Sephiroth is throwing that term around, I'm like, whoa, okay. But it makes sense because he knows he sees what's going on in Cloud's mind, and he also knows that he got killed in Nibelheim because Cloud flew off the handle in rage when he saw what he did to Tifa, not only, and also his hometown and his mother as well. So and again, that ties into kind of that mocking that he does in Gongaga. He says, let that righteous anger guide you. He's like, what is making Cloud angry? Tifa's in danger. Cloud snaps out of this Mako stupor that he's in because he had just inhaled a bunch of fumes, and he's like out of it. And then the minute he sees Tifa in danger, he kind of snaps out of it, and then he goes and flies into a rage. And then Sephiroth is able to use that to manipulate him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's just so many moving parts that's going on here, and all of this has just been this slow, gradual buildup. And I think they've handled it really, really well.
You're doing such a good job of being very, very, very diplomatic, and I really appreciate that, because you know the heat around this.
Oh yeah.
But let's get to it, okay? Obviously, there's gonna be look. I've been on Twitter.com, now X.com. I know there's a scorecard. You guys, some of you make spreadsheets. I count rainbows and stamps. You guys tally up dates against each other and stuff like that. How you? I imagine you watched every date. And in my mind, there were the two optional dates, like the ones, and I don't mean that they're not important to the story, and I don't think that's what the dev comment means either. People that can't read on Twitter, but there's the chapter 8 and chapter 12 player choice scenes that I think everybody should do all of, but then there is also, I think, canon scenes that connect the primary protagonist, the point of view character, with each of the quote-unquote love triangle characters. And I would say there's that one of them is the almost kiss scene with in Cisne's room, Gongaga and stuff like that, which incredible. And then you could say, and I will say, that the counterpart to that was the date in the interlude world, the beginning of chapter 14. Those are my two favorite scenes in the game. Actually, the final scene of the game is my favorite, single scene. But they're my two favorite sections of the game. I think they really explore a lot of interesting concepts, feel really interesting, regardless of how I feel about them in a romantic sense, or even what my opinions are on what love is, and my thoughts on monogamy, etc. Those things aside, those are my two favorite scenes. I want to know what you thought of the interlude date.
Personally, I think I'll just say this. I find it interesting that it's connected to Zack in the sense that if you turn off the Zack chapters, this date disappears along with it.
Sure. Uh-oh, we're losing you a little. Oh no. She was about to get super spicy. They got her.
Oh!
They got her. Margot, was that you?
Oh no, my door just got broken down. No, I got a crosshair on my head. Okay, but yeah, I just find it deeply interesting how there, no matter what Cloud chooses, it's almost like his choices are taken from him. I find that interesting thematically. It's like almost like I feel like there's some kind of meta commentary going on
being able
with that.
to skip that scene. Okay.
And the simple fact that I don't know about you, but I would hate it if Cloud and Tifa were on a date and it kept cutting to like Emilio or something like that, or Rude or some other character that had some romantic interest in Tifa, and throughout the entirety of Cloud and Tifa's date, the camera kept cutting away to this other person. I don't know. I wouldn't find that deeply romantic. I kind of take issue with that personally.
Okay.
And I also I think it's a sweet moment because, again, I view it as I think the way that the developers intended it to be viewed. This is a farewell. This is Aerith trying to get some closure because she knows her time's running out. And if you're playing the English version, now the dialogue changes slightly with the languages, which I find a little annoying, but regardless, the overall intention of the scene remains the same, and that is that Aerith knows that her time is running out, and that's why the photographer kind of passes them over and says, "Hey, that girl looks like she's about to cry. You guys don't look like you're on a date. You're at a funeral." I was like, "Oh man, that's brutal."
Yeah.
But
yeah. I loved it.
One of those things where, again, the purpose of it is not, oh, we're building up some great romance here. The purpose of it is, this is a farewell, and this is Aerith getting some closure, I think, before because she knows she's not gonna get many more opportunities. And again, the fact that No Promises to Keep is playing in the background re-emphasizes that, especially since we know now, because Nojima made it pretty clear, he's repeated this a couple of times.
Don't get me started on this topic.
Hey, you told me to get spicy. I'm getting spicy.
Yeah.
But that Nojima said that this song is about Aerith's love for everyone, for the people that she's grown close to throughout the journey. And that includes Cloud too. But it's also, in a way, a farewell song. That's why she's crying at the end of it, because she realizes, hey, I'm not going to have much more time left. She's not super happy about the fact that she feels like, her choices are kind of being taken away from her. And I think that maybe even tie into a little bit of this meta about no matter what choices you make at each of these vendor stalls, someone else chooses for you. Right. Because ultimately, yeah, her choices are being taken from her. Cloud's choices are being taken away from him. So there's this kind of meta, I think, about it, which is interesting. And I also find it funny that the stamps in this world bear a striking resemblance to a certain soldier. Black fur, little on the spiky side. Just thought I'd point that out. And so it's just there's a lot of meta commentary going on. There's a lot of ties to Zack for a quote unquote Claire date, especially considering Aerith goes to Cloud and says, "Hey, let's go meet at our spot," and Cloud's like, "What? Our spot?" And then the camera cuts to it, and guess who's sitting there at the church? Unprompted. No one told him, "Hey, let's go meet at our spot." He just instinctively knows, "Hey, this is where I'm going to go meet Aerith." And it seems that no matter where Zack is, he always seems to end up at that church. I just find that interesting. Just an observation.
Do you think it's possible for all of these characters, all four of them, to love each other and I think we could probably agree that Tifa has a very genuine love for Cloud. Nobody in the world is going to really argue that. Cloud, I believe Cloud has his authentic self, has always had a love for Tifa. I think we probably both agree that Aerith loves Zack, and I think you'd probably even agree that Aerith loves Cloud, maybe even romantically. Is there any world where this works for you, or would be okay if a part of Cloud also had romantic feelings towards Aerith?
That's a tricky question.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would depend on in what way it would affect his relationship with Tifa. Because that to me is, and again, as someone who's been in this fandom for a very long time and having to deal with these ridiculous talking points that, oh, Cloud just settled for Tifa, or she's a rebound, or even, oh, he doesn't even care about Tifa. He's just living there. He really just wants to reunite with Aerith. It's just really soured me on any concepts like that altogether.
Yeah, but that's them. Don't listen to them. In your mind, in your heart, what do you believe? Do you believe people can do that? Do you believe that people can kind of hold complex feelings like that?
I think they can, but I also think that we also have to understand that there's a story that's being told here in a certain way, and I think that it's a little far-fetched, I think, to say that Cloud would just, if he supposedly has these deep-seated feelings for Aerith, then how is he just, making love to Tifa like?
Okay. I don't know. I don't know if deep-seated is a fair way to describe any of his feelings in any state. I mean, I think they grow over time. It's an uncomfortable kind of line that we kind of toe. But we do have to remember Cloud is emotionally a 16-year-old, and he wasn't exactly the most communicative person emotionally before. So I do think that I'll just level with you that I think that the most of the game kind of sets up that he has the most authentic feelings for Tifa. I do believe that that's kind of the way things line up in the compilation. I know you agree. I do think that you could make an argument that the state that he's in, during the date scene, I think that person may have things that would be considered romantic feelings towards Aerith. When he grows up, when he goes through his whole thing, will that still be the case? Probably not. It'll probably bounce out of romance. But I still think that there's some value to exploring the fact that he may have, at least a part of him may have romantic feelings for Aerith, at least that state of him, and in my mind, I see Tifa as having the most emotional maturity and ability to understand what's going on with Cloud. I think, like, more than any other character, and I think that she would be equipped to handle that truth. What is that your takeaway, or do you think no, Tifa would be pissed?
I think Tifa.
Yeah. Go on.
I think, yeah. Well, I do agree that Tifa does have this emotional maturity, which is why she is, again, the best partner for Cloud, because she's the one who can handle him the best. And she, as Nomura has pointed out, she is the one who is able to support that, emotionally weak side of him.
Mm-hmm.
She's able to handle his vulnerabilities and everything. I just dislike this notion that somehow it's Tifa's responsibility to pick up the pieces, as it were. I've heard this talking point bandied about, and it's really kind of gross. Like, somehow, like, Tifa is able to be completely faithful to Cloud, and Tifa is hit on by so many different people throughout the story, but she is completely faithful to Cloud. She could literally have any guy she wanted, but she's so dedicated to Cloud. So why is it so out of the realm of possibility that he may be the same way? Like, and I'm not saying he can't have, like, attractions to other people. I mean, he has attractions to Madam M at this point, but whether or not he's willing to act on those is an entirely different thing.
Okay, that's a fair distinction, yeah.
And we see, again, this distinction between the way that Cloud acts around Tifa versus pretty much anyone else. And that doesn't mean that he isn't friendly towards other people. It doesn't mean he doesn't care deeply about the people around him. But as far as, and we have to also remember this as well, is that, regardless of even having slight feelings or fleeting feelings of any kind, what matters to me is, what does he act upon? What can we actually see him doing? What is he actually acting upon? And plain simple fact of the matter is, Cloud always acts on his feelings for Tifa. He builds his entire, like, he goes off to join Soldier to impress her. He will go and join Avalanche, if she asks him to. He holds on to a 7-year-long promise. In fact, that's one of the few memories in his head that's actually pure and hasn't been tainted by Genova, is this promise on the water tower. And he's still hanging on to that 7 years later. I mean, that is like a core of what Cloud is that he's someone who's loyal. So I just, I don't think it's fair to say that he doesn't find Aerith intriguing or even attractive. But as far as actually pursuing any sort of relationship with her, I don't know. And I also think that, people may not want to hear this, but I also think that in Cloud's mind, like, he associates Aerith with Zack in his own mind. Like, you can really see this in Nibelheim as well. There's a scene where he walks into the inn and he has a flashback and he remembers Zack telling him about Aerith. And so it just seems like, and Cloud is like acknowledging, and even in his own mind, hey, this is somebody who Zack really loved. And so a huge part of the development between Cloud and Aerith involves Zack. So I feel like that was a very purposeful decision by the developers. Again, why muddy the waters to that degree if that wasn't what if they were intending to take the story in that direction leading up to that. But that's just my opinion on it.
No, I hear you, and that's valid. I would say that whether the persona that Cloud has, let's say during the interlude date, is the closest to his core self or not. I do think that he acknowledges in the OG, and I hope that he acknowledges to some degree in part 3 that, you know, that was still to some degree his own perception of how he ought to act in that. Yes, he did have some of Zack's memories, you know, and that's going to affect it. But it is a part of him, you know. But I hope that they acknowledge that, and I hope Tifa acknowledges that. I hope that gets explored, you know, and that if they have a conversations, let's say, about their feelings, like, this is all hypothetical, guys. I'm not saying that, you know, your weird headcanon where Earth lives and, you know, whatever, that might happen still. That's fine. I'm not saying that it doesn't. What I'm saying is, let's say, you know, for the sake of argument, that, you know, we get an end of life stream sequence and Tifa and Cloud are talking. I would really like them to explore the topic of Aerith, you know, and really, like, define those things clearly in a way that, hey, maybe it's a little messy, because life is messy. Their lives are really messy. But say, hey, you know, this is what, and then this is what it was. This is what we are. This is what we can become. You know, I would like to see that kind of discussed in a healthy way, because there are some elements to the whole, you know, love triangle that I think are a little bit reductive to all the people involved. And I do think that they're adding layers of nuance to all of the characters' relationships that will allow them to explore this in a more, like, adult way. Like, for instance, we do see this. There is, even though there's this part of Aerith, and I know we're bringing up Aerith in the Tifa talk, but it's the shipping section, so forgive me. But there's this part of Aerith that, like, wants to live her life. She's young. There's this looming threat of death over her. She has feelings for Cloud. She wants at least to have a little bit of, like, what it's like to live a life, you know, just like a little bit, just a little taste, you know, before she fades into the permanent life stream. And I think that we can kind of forgive her that if we also look at how much she's done to kind of contribute, in my mind, the way that I read this, she's done a lot to contribute to Tifa and Cloud's relationship. Like, she gives him advice about Tifa, you know. Is it good advice? It's not terrible advice. It's not like backstabber advice. Is there a little bit of sass in there every now and then? Does she throw him under the bus over Madam M? Sure. You know, there's some annoying behavior there. They're kids, you know. They didn't really learn how to live in a balanced way. But a lot of what her character does seem to be elevating, like, Cloud and Tifa's relationship. And I would love to see that explored in, like, kind of an adult, mature way. That, hey, these were, you know, whatever they do, you know, however it ends, I'd like them to, you know, acknowledge that, hey, there's more than one person here. A lot of people have feelings. This is what happens in life. People have feelings. They're complex. And here's where we are now. Here's how we build. Here's how we grow for it. You know, here's how we establish roots. I would like to see that personally. I don't know how you feel about that.
I would say it largely depends on how it's handled.
Sure.
Again, it's one of those things where if it's not handled in the appropriate way, it could end up just making things way messier. And again, as someone who's been in the trenches, who's on the front lines of this, I'm just like, we can just make this as clean and neat as possible. That would be greatly appreciated. Because quite honestly, 27 years is quite enough. Let's just put the kibosh on it. Let's tie this up with a neat little bow and be done with it. That's where I'm at on it. Let's just be done with the LTD. I'm quite tired of it. I'm sure the Final Fantasy VII fandom as a whole is quite done with it. I think we've explored every nook and cranny and avenue of this damn thing. Let's just Be done with it.
That's fair. I can understand wanting that. You know, I'm an old person. I like.
Had so many exhaustive conversations on
I
this subject.
know.
Like, I'm so sick to the back teeth of the debate. Like, let's just be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there's a way to settle this debate, really? Like, really?
Unfortunately, I think there's always going to be people like I know this is going to sound crass, but it's true. Cloud Tifa could be, full, just full sex scene out in the middle of the full screen,
Yeah.
and there would still be people denying it. They'd come up with every excuse in the world. This is a retcon. The Cloudies threatened the developers. This scene was hacked. The Russians did this. I mean, whatever. Just list the excuse. The excuse will be there. Oh, he just is trying to get over Aerith, and this is a rebound, or he did this out of jealousy, or just every excuse in the world will be thrown at it. There's gonna be people who are just not going to accept it. That's why I made the little joke video I posted earlier with the scene from Liar Liar. It's like, that's how some people are going to act. Like, and the thing is, I'm firmly in the camp that, well, first of all, I feel like they've already settled this LTD. There's a reason why there is a lot of hatred thrown at the compilation by a certain camp in this fandom, and I'm just gonna leave it at that, because this really has already been settled. The problem is that people don't read. They don't read. There's been countless interviews from the developers about Advent Children explaining exactly what that story is about, explaining the nature of Cloud and Tifa's relationship. You got Zack and Aerith walking off into the live stream together. I don't know. That's about as much as you can possibly get. I mean, the most they can do is they can enhance that a little bit. They can throw in a few more scenes. But quite honestly, this debate, if people were honest with themselves, has already been settled. People just don't like the outcome. That's really what it's boiled down to. People just don't want to accept that that's the way the story goes. And yeah, there's complexities to the story. Yeah, there's nuance. But ultimately, what is the end game? What is the end game? We've already seen it. And I'm telling you now, it's gonna happen again in this re-trilogy. In whatever form, whatever vision they have for this re-trilogy, the overall end game will remain the same. Cloud and Tifa are still going to be together by the end of this. So I really don't see, like, it's like for me, it's like kind of a pointless question. Like, oh, how are they going to end the LTD? Homie, they already did, but people just don't want to accept it.
Yeah.
They'll come up with 1,000,001 excuses about why Cloud and Tifa are living under the same roof, but somehow are not a couple. But Cloud and Aerith are weapons now, or they're having, or Cloud and Aerith had a blue baby.
Yeah.
But Cloud and Tifa raising Denzel together. Oh, that's not a real family. Excuse me?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit here and act like we're on the same level. We are not the same.
Do you worry that maybe like the factionalization thing maybe kind of, I don't know, devalues the art? Like, do you think that the developers should cater to factionalization, or should they make their art?
I think that everyone's a critic. No, no, I think
it's true. Yeah.
The thing is I can appreciate the story as it's written. There's really, I mean, really all you have to do is look around the fandom as it is right now and see which ones are pounding the drums, wanting everything to change in a certain direction. Whole characters need to be brought back to life or not be killed off at all. Certain other characters need to die in their place. The Highwind scene needs to have Aerith in it now. We can't have Tifa there anymore. Let's the original scene that we of Cloudies have been gaslit for I don't know how many years, that nothing happens under the Highwind. They're exchanging stamp collections, they're drinking tea, they're playing Queen's Blood, whatever. They're doing everything except doing the very obvious thing that the developers were already hinting around that they were doing. But we're gonna go ahead and throw Aerith in that scene because nothing happened between Cloud and Tifa in that scene. We just want to throw Aerith in there now for whatever reason. I mean, that to me tells me everything I need to know about the state of this debate.
So what you're saying is that the developers should make Cloud and Aerith into two little sperm weapons? Is that what you're saying? I wasn't paying attention. No, I'm kidding. No, look, I'm with you. The fandom, it's like, don't let... I love 99% of you. Really. I really, really do. The fandom in FF7 in particular is a special kind of weird, and there are these fringes that should be studied by sociologists for years to come. I definitely agree with that. I do fear though, that like kind of the loudness of this element, will kind of shape the conversation when, like you said, like I didn't see it as a love triangle debate. I never felt like the information presented was that. I mean, there's interpretive elements, like does humanity survive at the end of OG, and then that gets waved away by the compilation. But, like I wasn't super confused about who had feelings for who or anything like that. Do I think there was a love triangle? A little bit. Yeah. Do I think there's a debate about it? Not really. And I do understand why people get really wrapped into that, and it's an interesting thing to talk about. It's also a thing that people value in certain storytelling. Like, I like, this shit about Gaia theory. Other people like, romance. I get that there's this, that there's different things people love in the story, and shipping is a thing that, should be allowed to be kind of talked about. But I do think that, like, there's something kind of adult and real about the way that Rebirth was presented, in that, yeah, like, there are real feelings involved in kind of all facets of this. It's complex. I would rather they just stick true to that vision, and then if you want to fantasize about who Cloud ends up with, he's probably going to end up with the alive one, like, you can kind of let that go. But if you want to explore the different relationships each of them had, that's fine. But I don't think that they should, if like they're feeling, hey, we want to leave elements up to interpretation. We want to let you solve the problem. We want to let you kind of fantasize about, how these characters interacted and how. I think they should do that. I don't think they should do it because, Final Fantasy House exists, or because people are insane on Twitter. Like, I think they should do it because it's what they want. That being said, what I think they want is for Cloud and Tifa to be there. That's just my opinion,
Yeah. Well, so I guess to get back to your original point, do you think I'm going to support the devs' vision or not? And the answer is yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm an FF7 fan.
Yeah.
I might have my criticisms here and there about the way certain things are handled.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, whatever the devs decide to do is whatever the devs are going to decide to do. I don't think that they're their decision making should be based upon someone's unhinged rant on Twitter. No,
Right.
absolutely not. That's how we end up with dumpster fires of stories.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm 100% behind whatever the devs decide to do. And whatever they decide to, and if I decide I don't like the story anymore, then guess what? I'm going to pick up my shit and leave. I'm going to go find some other fandom that does it for me. I'm not going to stick around for 27 years pounding the drums of war saying, you better bring this dead character back or I'm going to do this, that. It's like, that's unhinged. Yeah. I'm sorry. That's crazy. Like, if the story didn't do it for you 27 years ago, it's probably not going to do it for you this time around either. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but come on, people. Think about it. Use some common sense. I know common sense ain't that common anymore, but at the same time, like, if it didn't do it for you 27 years ago, chances are you're not going to like the re-trilogy either. Because guess what? For whatever changes that may come, they've already told us multiple times, hey, don't expect this story to go off the rails. And some of the changes people are demanding would absolutely require, like, completely just dismantling the story as we know it entirely and turning it into something unrecognizable. I'm sorry, that's not on the cards. It never has been. And so people better come to terms with that now. And I don't know, maybe stop trying to make the rest of us miserable in the process.
I hear what you're saying, and I think that's the best advice that I can give any of you. If you're watching and you didn't like any of this, you didn't like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, if you don't like the remake project, I tell you the best thing to do is find something else. Please do not create entire personas around disliking a thing. That doesn't change art for the better. You're not talking devs into conforming to your will for you. You're just making it seem less safe to make creative risks. That's all you're doing. You're not creating good pathways for somebody to create something interesting. You're eliminating interesting pathways so that when a developer, let's say, comes into the second part of an anthology trilogy and they look at fan responses, the waters are so muddy that they end up making weirdly safe choices that nobody likes, but that guarantees they aren't putting 1,000 people out of work with a weird risk because they're so afraid to take risks now. So if you don't like something, just go support the thing you like instead of creating a personality around a thing you don't like. Please, I'm begging you. Or if that is all you know how to do, can you please block me and never comment on my stuff? Okay, end rant. All right, so we're kind of at the end of our discussion. You've made great points and you've been a great guest. So now's the time we kind of ask some questions. Chat went wild, and so there were some questions up top that have now been pushed out. So maybe restate some of your questions, but there's a good one I saw. Somebody asked if they thought, seems like the live stream sequence will be this is from Super Ramio. Seems like the live stream sequence will be at least a bit different in part 3 since 1, they released Crisis Core Reunion, and 2, they covered the childhood memories so far in the Tifa sequence in Gungaga. Of course, the dots still need to be connected for Tifa and Cloud, but revealing that Cloud was the infantryman will still probably not be all there is to it. what would you like to see in the live stream sequence? What mystery are you most looking forward to it answering? We'll start with you, Monk.
Well, there's always been the question of, and this is covered in Traces of Two Past, what caused Cloud to initially kind of separate himself from Tifa? Because everyone always kind of assumes that, oh, he separates himself after the incident on the mountain. But if you read Traces of Two Past, Tifa talks about how when they were little kids, they used to go to each other's houses all the time, like without an announcement. They were just so used to going to each other's houses and playing together. But as they got a little older, Cloud started to separate himself even before the incident on the mountain. Now I have an idea of why, but I would personally kind of like to see that expanded on in the live stream scene, because again, that would go to further deepen the relationship between Cloud and Tifa, and also explain some of his behavior and kind of flesh out how he deals with things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I've always been under the impression that the reason why he starts kind of separating himself from Tifa is because, and you can see this in Traces of Two Past whenever Emilio's brought up, or even in Rebirth, that Cloud gets kind of miffed, and he has this tendency to have jealousy around anyone who, especially men who pay attention to Tifa, or boys in the case of when he was younger. And I think that he was probably experiencing the early stages of some puppy love. I mean, he was very little, so I wouldn't classify as anything super deep at that age, but I'm sure it kind of freaked him out a little bit, because we know how Cloud is. So that's when he started separating himself. Because we know that Cloud and Tifa, they developed like a puppy love for each other like super early. I mean, there's a passage in Traces of Two Past where Thea is teasing Tifa about, like, oh, that Cloud, he's got such a pretty face, and Brian is already getting all bent out of shape over it. So it'd be kind of interesting to explore that aspect, because that's something that hasn't really been touched on before.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think this is a tough question, because so much of the 3 games really needs to wrap up here. So the live stream sequence has to be bigger. Has to be. I know that it is like very sacred, probably very sacred to you. As somebody that found it like the most important scene of my formative early adulthood, it's very important to me. However, I am a godless sodomite and nothing is sacred to me, so I don't mind them improving it or changing it. How they do that's going to be really, really tough. I understand that if Aerith shows up at all, it will inflame this portion of the discussion, right? The love triangle debate people. However, I do think it's got to come up. Why I think it has to come up? Because I think it's when Cloud recognizes what really happened. And I think what they've set up is that this plan to kind of counter gaslight Cloud, this plan to kind of prevent him from turning into a rogue, because they've sort of accelerated the idea of the negative live stream and the way that soldiers degrade. And it seems clear that what Sephiroth was trying to do was push Cloud into full corruption by killing Aerith. And what Aerith did was enacted a plan that I believe she worked out with Tifa. Where Tifa's going to have to kind of wait for the moment that's appropriate. And Aerith is going to be Tifa's guide into guiding Cloud through the live stream sequence. Like, allowing him to stomach the fact that he failed in protecting Aerith. Like, regardless of the romantic feelings of that, like, he failed in protecting her. You know, that was the scene that he wasn't a good friend, let alone love interest, you know. And so that's the kind of despair that Sephiroth has been shown to feed on now, and that's always been kind of in the back burner of his character, but that's elevated aggressively in the compilation, right? Where we're getting these concepts of negative life stream. We're seeing him actively convert despair into negative life stream visually and like in very clear language. This is the mechanic by which the geostigma worked in Advent Children. This is the mechanic by which both Broden and Roche are turned into robes, you know, and then after Roche in particular, Aerith and Tifa come up to Cloud and say, that's not going to happen to you. And I think that's foreshadowing what the live stream sequence is really about. It's about saving Cloud. And does that mean that, like, it will reduce, you know, Tifa's instrumental core memory role in the scene? I hope not. I don't think they will. I'm not seeing indications that they've lost what Tifa is to Cloud by any of the developments. Like, it looks really clean to me. It looks like really clear. But do I think that Aerith will get involved in that scene in a way that might initially give us some discomfort, but as we start to like pull away and look at the grander thing, I think all of the characters that Cloud has made connections with will find their way into Cloud's sort of grand unified theory of the live stream sequence. Like, the synergy system, you know, the affinity system in this game, it is not about the characters' relationships with each other. It's about Cloud's relationship with each character. You build these connections because at the core, that's what makes Cloud respond differently to his orphanage, of his orphanhood, his trauma, him losing everything, his being a puppet. That's how he responds differently than Sephiroth. That's what makes him Sephiroth's foil, is that in his deepest core, Cloud loves people. He loves everybody. As cheesy as shit as that Advent Children line is at the end before he does Omni/version 5, where he talks about, there's not a person I don't care about. And you're like, that didn't land, bro. That sounded way cooler in your head, dog. Like, it's still the core of his character. And it worked really well in the Nibelheim incident, like when we find out what really happens when Cloud bodies Sephiroth 1v1 at 16 years old without any special powers. Like learning that that's what Cloud is really important. And it feels like what they're helping us do is recognize that the bonds he's made, the found family he's created, is what he gathers that strength from. And that's the most Final Fantasy shit you can do with a character arc. It's the most like quintessentially Final Fantasy thing you can do. What is the crux of this Final Fantasy game? It's the live stream sequence. So I ultimately think, yes, Tifa is still going to be the core of that, of helping him find who he really is. Like, but do I think the other characters get involved? I think they have to. I think they've escalated this thing too much. And I know that there's a complaint that less is more, and I get that. I understand the OG relied very heavily on like abstract storytelling so that you could fill in the gaps on your own. And also it's been explained to death so that people that are, you know, newer to the fandom were able to use Google when they played the game for the first time, unlike me. You know, like, I understand that stuff feels all spelled out in OG, and you didn't need a lot of exposition. But in Rebirth, they've set their sights really big. You know, like, there's this giant line across the sky that looks like the line in Cloud's mind. Cloud's mind is Part 3. So, like, it's the backdrop for all of this. So I do think it's gonna have to tackle all of the scenes. It's gonna have to be the thing that closes up most of the mysteries. And I hate to say that, but if if Glenn ends up being Cloud's dad somehow, and I'm not saying he is, I've trolled Monk about it a lot over the last couple days, but I'm not saying that they've decided that's what's going on for him. But like, if there's something about Cloud's dad that we learn, that's going to show up there too. This is the grand unified bow that we wrap on all of Final Fantasy. This is the payoff for everything. And so I do think we're going to see a lot of stuff in that scene. And hopefully it lands.
Yeah. And I think that it's important that they stick the landing on this. Because ultimately, the way something ends is usually the way people remember something. Game of Thrones is a prime example of that.
Yeah, it really is.
So,
yeah,
it's very important to stick the landing. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Yeah. Lost is another example that's been coming up a lot. Although I would argue Lost actually had a better ending than Game of Thrones. I don't think Game of Thrones' ending will ever age appropriately. Like, there's no amount of time, that is going to change the way people see that atrocity. But okay, and then Erdix asks, and this will be our last question, and then we'll call it. And it's, thanks both for the chat. Love Tifa and can't wait to see Final Heaven. My question is, what is each of your favorite Tifa abilities, skills, limit from OG and re-trilogy so far? Anything you're hoping they'll let her do, i.e. wall cling, Advent Children style, or something?
Well, personally, I love Dolphin Flurry because honestly, it is one of her prettiest looking limit breaks, and honestly, I'm excited to see what the new outfits and stuff are going to be for part 3. Like, what's the Northern Crater outfit's going to look like? She's not going to be up there in a skirt. They're going to have to wear parkas and stuff because it's going to be cold. And I don't know. I'm excited about a lot of stuff because again, this too is like the best out of pretty much any part of the game. It contains some of the best plot points, and it's got some amazing scenes with Tifa, the escape from Junon, Medeal. Oh man, I'm not ready for Medeal. I mean, I'm ready for Medeal, but I'm not ready for Medeal. So that's just one of the things that I'm really excited about.
Yeah. She's a beast in the game. She's like she's so broken. Tifa has consistently been broken in Remake and Rebirth. And that's another huge upgrade. I feel like she was fine in the OG, but the OG is really it's all like in Endgame, it's all about materia loadouts and nothing really matters. Like, limit break's the only thing that really disconnects you, and on a technical sense, the two characters that have the missing number glitch are the strongest ones, because you can one-shot the weapons with Barrett and Vincent if you break things. But with Remake and Rebirth, she's so kinetic to play with, and for me, like, one of the first times, like, oh, Tifa's really cool, was in Advent Children when she had that fight with Laz. I was like, that's so fucking cool. And when Remake and Rebirth, Re-Trilogy Tifa fought like that, so cool. And so I loved playing with all the characters, but like, my main party was always just destroying people with Tifa and Yuffie. Like, it's such a brutal combo, and then throw in Cloud. It's just such a brutal combo. So I'm excited to see how they make her combat even more frenetic, and I do want to see Final Heaven. I'm really looking forward to that. In terms of outfits, yeah, we got to see more outfits. Got to see more outfits. I'm excited I hope we get more outfits for Rebirth, to be honest. Yeah. So, we'll see.
Well, it's a hit PC, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, when it hits PC, then it'll just be it'll be like it'll be ultra horny for the first 2 weeks, and then it'll level out, and we'll get new costumes. That's just the way of modding, you know. Yeah, that's how you do. Well, okay, guys. It's been really good. Do you have any closing thoughts for chat and for YouTube, Monk?
No, not really. Just I guess be excited, I guess. And it's gonna be a long 3 years.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say. It's gonna be a long 3 years.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure we'll have you on again soon. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, chat. Thank you, Monk, for joining. And with that, goodbye, YouTube.